Hi, friends. Welcome back to another Ask Augustine. And this week we are chatting about paperwork. Is there paperwork in midwifery? Do you have paperwork you're supposed to be doing? And what if you don't? Are there any legal, professional, personal repercussions? That's our topics tonight. So I go live every single week to chat with midwives and birth workers around the globe to talk about birth business, clinical practice, work-life balance, and all the things that make up practicing midwifery. So welcome to our chat tonight, today, this morning, wherever you are in the world. And like I said, we're chatting about paperwork in midwifery. So the first thing I'll say is hi, welcome. Say hi to me, send me a wave, send me a heart, a love, a like, all those great things. And if you have questions about the paperwork side of birth business, tell me what your pain point is. Tell me what your questions are, and we will chat about that tonight. If you're tuning in from, you have a keyboard in front of you, you can type where in the world you're tuning in. I'd love to hear from you. And like I said, I always chat every week about something birth, business, birth, clinical related. And tonight we're talking about paperwork. So I've had a lot of questions this week. I've just launched a new birth business course for midwives. And in launching that and talking about the pain points of birth business, I have gotten a lot of comments, a lot of questions. So I'm going to answer some of those questions tonight. Hi, Barbara. Good to see you. Oh my gosh, I miss you too, my friend. Janessa's on the call. Hi, friend. So many great people. So tonight we are talking about paperwork and birth business. Vanessa says she's drowning in paperwork. Oh, I hear you, friend. Yeah, it's no joke. Paperwork is a part of the job and we have to be prepared. So what paperwork am I talking about? Well, first I want to ask you, what paperwork are you struggling with? Midwives have to have contracts, informed decision-making documents, and then there's tax ID numbers, business ID numbers, articles of incorporation, bylaws, tax codes, taxonomy codes, the list goes on and on. So what paperwork currently has you down? What are you struggling with? What are you worried about? Send me a little message and a hi and a wave. And hi, friends. Good to see you. I see some people I know. I do these Facebook Lives every single week. And so I invite you to join me to ask questions or to contribute to our knowledge base as a profession. So if you're just joining, tell me where you're joining from. And tonight's topic is about the paperwork of midwifery. Midwives need to have a whole suite of informed consent documents, informed refusal documents, informed decision-making documents so that they can help clients with their care. Midwives also need to have contracts, legal contracts between them and their staff, between them and their students, them and colleagues, backups. And then also you need to have a contract with every single client that hires you that outlines how the money is going to be charged, paid, what you get for what you pay, all of that. Then there's also paperwork around the running of your business. You'll need to have maybe articles of incorporation or bylaws filed. Maybe you need to file your business name. Potentially, you might also need to file for tax ID number or business ID number or license or accreditation. All of this is part of the paperwork of midwifery. So as I'm chatting about this tonight, I have a few questions I got that I want to answer, but I also want to answer your questions. So if you're live tonight with me, or if you're watching the replay, I invite you to send me a question, a comment, anything that you have that helps you or that you're struggling with around the paperwork side of midwifery. So one of the specific questions I got was, what happens if I have an assistant? How do I bring them on staff, or how do I contract with an assistant? And that is a great question, and it's actually got a fairly complicated answer. So let me see if I can get this clear for you. So you should have a contract with anyone that you work with. This is really to be clear. I know lots of midwives come up with general sort of working agreements, verbal agreements, and they don't actually ever sign anything. But obviously, there's some major challenges with that. If you don't ever sign a contract, then nothing's actually enforceable, which means that you're essentially on the honor system. And obviously, midwives are very honorable people. We oftentimes are doing the best, the highest good for each other. But let's be honest, shit comes up. And when someone said they were going to be there and then they changed their mind, or financial matters start to complicate relationships, or there's some kind of question about what it is you ever agreed to in the first place, without having a contract, those decisions or those agreements are not enforceable. So I highly recommend that all midwives have contracts whenever they have assistants or colleagues that cover call for them. So that's number one. What needs to be in the contract, or what's the difference between a staff member and or an employee and an independent contractor? This is a really important concept, and we're actually not going to get too deep in this. I do have a whole chapter on this exact topic in my new course, Start a Midwifery Business Right, and that is actually launching this week. So if you'd like to take the full course, if you're new to midwifery, have a new practice, and you want to sign up, definitely leave me your email, and I'll get you to that sign up page. But essentially, whenever you are working with someone, you need to figure out how you're going to pay them, not just having the money, but actually legally, how you're going to structure your reimbursement schedule. Are you going to reimburse someone on a regular basis, in a per diem basis? Are you going to reimburse someone for per project or hourly? And then based on some of those decisions and a whole lot of other information from the IRS, which I share in my course, we come to the decision of whether this is an employee or whether this is an independent contractor. And different tax laws and different benefits apply to the different categories. It's really important that you don't mess this up. A lot of people don't know this, but there's upwards of a $50,000 fine for not paying state income tax and state employee taxes. So if you have someone who's actually working as an employee, but you're paying them as an independent contractor, you can actually be in a lot of risk from your state tax law. Most midwives in the U.S. Working in a private practice or a group practice in a small to medium volume, what they really have is they have independent contractors. They don't actually have staff. So most midwives who are coming on and hiring people, they really are hiring independent contractors, not staff midwives. And so it makes sense to avoid some of the expenses as an employer by switching your business to having independent contractors only. But like I said, if you have certain rules, certain requirements that you're requiring of these people, they might actually be staff members. And if you're not paying state employee tax, that can be really, really dangerous and expensive in the end. So how do you bring a midwife on staff, or how do you onboard an assistant? First of all, you need to have a verbal agreement of you understand what you're doing. Then you would draft a contract. Both go through every section of the contract so that you agree on the words. And then eventually you'll want to have that contract reviewed by a lawyer. We also have a lawyer at Midwifery Wisdom. So if you need to connect with a contract lawyer, let me know. You might have one already on staff or already somebody in your community that you use, but you want to have a lawyer review the contract that you have. And you'll want to cover details in your contract like hours that they're required to work, clothing they're required to wear, things they're not allowed to do, what the scope and nature of their job is, when they'll be reimbursed, how firing happens. All those things are really important in terms of how you go about coming to a contractual agreement with midwives employees. So if you're just joining, hey, give me a wave, give me a hey, good to see everyone. Tonight we are talking about the paperwork of midwifery, how challenging that can be sometimes. I'm answering a few questions I got this week from midwives who are preparing to take my Start a Midwifery Business Right course, which is just coming up. And if you're new to midwifery, starting a new practice, or thinking about it because you're about to graduate, I gotta say, this class is for you. I've spent a number of months putting together the content here. It's essentially a business coach, a lawyer, a tax accountant, all wrapped up into one. We give you all the foundations of how to start your midwifery business right. And paperwork is a huge part of it. If you are starting an LLC, you will need to file something else, and this is your articles of incorporation, or sometimes called bylaws. Sometimes they're just called membership agreements, depending on how many members you have in your LLC. If it's just you, if you're a sole member LLC, it can be very quick and easy to draft this up. But if you are working with others, you'll need to do those together and agree on what the operating agreement of that organization is. And it can be kind of difficult. So we go into deep detail with that in the course. What other paperwork is daunting for you? A lot of midwives will say informed consents are very daunting because to be truly legally sound and protect you in a defensive way when you're charting and when you're, rendering care, informed consents need to be non-biased. They need to have the benefit, the risk, the alternative, very evidence-based information. So if you aren't already, I'm highly encouraging that all midwives have a suite of informed decision-making documents that they go through with every client at every choice point. And remember, if you're in a situation that you don't have a standard informed consent developed for, you can always develop one on the spot. You can write one with the client based on the complication or the intervention that you're considering at that time. My last piece of information about paperwork for midwives that's free, because there's lots of information in my course. My last piece of information is about your policy and procedure manual. So hands up if you have a policy and procedure manual and you use it regularly. If you don't, I'm not going to make you out yourself, but if you don't, please, please, please stop what you're doing and write one right now. A policy and procedures document is so, so important, not just for the guide, the go-to for you, staff, and employees about how to manage every situation, but also it is your most defensive document so that if you were ever investigated, or your charts are being reviewed in some way, the policy and procedures manual is what defends you, because before the event happened, your policy and procedure manual says what you plan to do. So as long as you do what you planned to do, there's very little risk for you, or at least it's significantly reduced. So policy and procedures, very important. We go into this in the course as well. Let's see. Marcena's asking a question. Do you do separate consent contracts for certain situations, such as VBAC, breech, advanced maternal age? And what or all circumstances need a separate consent? That's a great question, Marcena. Yes, there is a consent for care. So there's, which I would call even an informed disclosure agreement, not even informed decision-making. The informed disclosure agreement, or the consent for care, is your big overview. It says who you are, how you got your training, how you practice, what you bring, what you don't bring. It's basically consent for midwifery care, right? And if they choose not to consent, they actually can't work with you, right? You don't work with people that don't consent to having you as their provider. So that's why it's an informed disclosure agreement and not really an informed decision-making agreement. But then beyond that consent for care, like the client says, yes, I want to work with you, midwife, with your training and your experience and what you bring and what you don't bring. I want to work with you. Then along the course of their care, at every choice point, at every decision-making situation, We give them another informed decision-making conversation and then document the decision that we did verbally. So some common ones like you were talking about is if you have a client who is a TOLAC hoping for a VBAC, there would be an informed decision-making document around that. Certainly if you were having someone who was a breech and they wanted to continue with a breech presentation, attempted vaginal birth, you would need to have an informed decision-making document around that to both empower the client to make the choices that's best for them, but also to protect you as the provider. But then there are more standard ones like GBS, group B strep, like GDM, like the vitamin K or the eye ointment option for their newborn. All of those choice points we want to document with decision-making documents. And those are the informed decision-making documents I've been chatting around. If you're new to practice or you just don't want to do this, I do have a suite of 14 informed decision-making documents for sale on my website. And that's midwiferywisdom.com/shop. And each of those you can buy separately or you can buy the whole lot. And we do have a discount for a bulk purchase. And they are evidence-based, researched, lawyer-reviewed, top-notch documents, and they're not branded in any way. So we leave the top section blank so that you can put your logo and contact information and make them yours. They're meant to just be a really quick cheat sheet, a way for you to get into legal defensive practice without doing a ton of research and writing. So welcome. If you're just joining me, give you a big wave, say hi. Tonight, I'm just doing my Ask Augustine bit like I do every week. And tonight we're talking about the paperwork in the practice of midwifery and how daunting that can be. Thanks, Kristen. I am in sweater world because I'm in the south hemisphere. It's winter here in Australia, so I'm bundled up. Anyway, hope tonight was helpful. If you have any last questions, definitely ask them. And certainly because I do this Ask Augustine every single week, if you have a question, either clinical or business, go ahead and send me a voicemail, send me an Instagram message, send me a Facebook message, ask me a question. I will bring you on and we can do a live Q&A that we will televise and share with everyone because it's always fun to do. Thanks so much for joining me. And as always, take really good care of yourselves. You're really, really important. We need midwives now more than ever. So be well, take good care of yourselves. Bye, everyone.